come from the British Isles, Scotland, England there represented, which is awesome, right? Just for the whole British Magic community. And I'm sure that everybody at home is going to be rooting for their favorite player there. These players have faced off against each other multiple times actually during the course of the tournament, and they split their matches in the Swiss portion, with Brad winning Historic. And you know how I know that, Paul? He hasn't lost in Historic yet. So anytime he's faced anybody in Historic, he has won. He's 11-0 currently. Autumn picking up the standard win, and then Brad winning earlier today in the upper finals. Now it's revenge time for Autumn Burchette, or Brad can continue his winning ways. The other interesting thing here, Paul, as we get underway in game one, these are the two outlier decks from our top 8. Everybody else was playing either Sultai or 4-color mid-range, which is basically Sultai with white. But here we have somehow blue-white control versus Goblins facing off against each other in the final.
Yeah, I mean, if you were to just kind of line up the odds, you would have expected at least one of these Sultai decks to be in the finals. But, I mean, we just saw Autumn just completely decimate all of her Sultai opponents. And it wasn't especially close. I'm sure Andrea Mengucci is going to have nightmares about Autumn Burchett, as he lost 3 historic matches in a row to Autumn.
Unbelievable. Autumn really had Mengu's number. Let's see what happens here. Look at this, Paul, right away. You see the Herald's Horn getting a Krenko Mob Boss onto the stack early. It's only 3 lands on the battlefield here for Autumn, and that's going to force an Ether Gust from Brad. Now, I have to say, Paul, that Brad has the tools that Mengu didn't have. And look at that. Right off the top is a cast out here to take care of that horn right now.
Yeah. So the really great thing about Barclay's version, or his deck specifically, is that he's got 4 copies of Cast Out in his deck. This Herald's Horn is one of the trump cards that Autumn has put into her deck for specifically the Sultai matchup, as they do not have a lot of answers to that artifact. However, when you look at Brad's list, we're talking about 4 copies of Cast Out and 4 copies of Teferi to get it off the battlefield as well. So given how Barkley's already 2-0 in this matchup, Barkley's got to be loving the fact that he's going up against Goblins here in the finals.
That's right. We see Autumn with the opportunity to replay Krenko Mob Boss, but she decides against it and goes for Conspicuous Snoop, which is very nice here. It reveals a wily Goblin, and that's going to be a nice way to help stem the bleeding from a potential Wrath of God, which Brad Barkley is playing 4 copies of in the main. We're going to see Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, though his big finisher hit the battlefield right now.
Yeah, but this is only going to draw Brad a card, as Autumn currently has an active Castle Embereth. Teferi's on 5, so Autumn simply just needs to attack with the 2 Goblins straight at Teferi, activate Castle Embereth, and that'll get Teferi off the battlefield. And if Autumn can do that, then Brad, with his hand currently, doesn't have any additional gas to follow that up.
It looks like Autumn's deciding if getting a wily Goblin and then using some treasure, or a treasure, to activate the castle is worth it. And it looks like so. Boy, you really can't love this here, though, from Brad, right? If your Teferi just nets you a card and that's it, you really need to get more out of your main source of card advantage down the late game than just getting a card and soaking up some damage here.
Yeah, I'm not sure if maybe Brad wanted to find. I'm not sure if Brad maybe wanted to be a little bit more patient with that Teferi, knowing that Krenko is sitting in Autumn's hand, maybe waiting to see if Autumn will go ahead and cast that Krenko before maybe running out of Wrath of God, and then following that up with the Teferi.
It does save Brad some life, where if he were to just simply say go, then that damage would have been hitting Brad instead, knocking him down to 14. So there is a little bit of upside there. But, this blue-white deck, Paul, it does need to capitalize on cards like Teferi to keep the cards flowing in the late game, because outside of Wrath of God, it has a lot of 1-for-1 style removal. You see Absorb and Cast Out in hand right now, for example.
Yeah, and it looked like Brad just decided he needed to cast Wrath of God, because Autumn, with what she had on the battlefield, didn't really need to commit any additional threats. That's 3 creatures plus an active Castle Embereth. So Brad kind of had to go ahead with the Wrath there. And we'll see if Autumn is now going to go ahead and run out this Krenko. Not really sure that she can afford to play around a second Wrath of God here. So looks like she is going to go ahead and just run out the Krenko here and just hope that Brad does not have a follow-up Wrath.
Interesting. Brad played the Hallowed Fountain untapped there. In their last match, Autumn Burchette was respecting the possibility of censor in a big way. And in fact, she does here as well, having that additional treasure to be able to sacrifice to it. Brad giving up 2 life for a little bluff there. But Autumn was able to play around the card that she wanted to. And now we're going to see a forced cast out. And yeah, you better do it now, Brad. If you let Autumn untap, we all know what can happen with Krenko. And look at this, Conspicuous Snoop just grinding in the mid game. You know, Autumn's deck really can change gears better than the decks that we've seen before, thanks to that.
Oh my goodness.
Whew. Hello. Even Autumn had to sit back in her chair a little there. Like, this is nice.
Look at the card advantage that we're getting from just a 2-mana 2/2.
I don't get it. In Historic, the best card advantage deck is mono red, and in Standard, it's mono green. It's just like, where's blue, right? Bring blue back.
Well, you know, Brad's trying his best here. He is definitely trying his best for all the blue mages out there who have been starving for a victory at this level with a base blue control deck. Brad is kind of their champion here.
Well, here comes Goblin Matron, the second card cast this turn off of Conspicuous Snoop. And I gotta say, that Castle Embereth really annoying here for Brad, as that's what's turning the little 1/1s and 2/2s that might not be super threatening into actually real threats.
Yeah, because if you take a look with all the mana sources Autumn has available, next turn, if she plays out the Castle Embereth, I mean, she can just double pump both of those goblins, and that's going to be an attack for 8. That's going to put Brad on a 2-turn clock after he goes down to 16 from the attack this turn. And as you can see, Autumn is thinking through her options right now. It's because she's deciding whether or not she wants to play Shatterskull Smashing here untapped to get an additional activation here from Castle Embereth and get in for 6 instead of 4.
She's going to end up just passing the turn back here. I believe she had played a land there, perhaps, but at any rate, I couldn't remember for sure. But at any rate, she has to send the turn back. Here's Castle Vantress getting activated. Tick tock.
Brad wants a Wrath.
And one went to the top there. And there it is. Wrath of God, all ready to go. Now you see another goblin on top of the library here. It's a wily goblin. Let's see if there's anything underneath. No, there's not.
All right, so
we have castle.
So Brad is going to stabilize here.
Yeah.
Autumn is going to be able to get an attack here for potentially 6 more points of damage with the double Castle Embereth activations.
Yep.
But this is at least an attack for 8.
Could be
now has to consider potentially a 1/1 token as well being made on the following turn to see if she wants to maximize the damage from the Castle Embereth this turn. Plenty of mana to cast the Muxus off the top. And yeah, we're just going full on damage here, putting Brad down to 6, but she's got no follow-up next turn. There's a land on top.
Okay, another Wrath of God off the top, and all of a sudden things like haste creatures start to become more important. Now, this draw step we know is going to be a mountain and go. Brad needs to find something like a Teferi to get the cards rolling, and he needs to do it soon, and Island is not going to cut it. Now, let's not forget Castle Vantress is there as well. That will help Brad churn through his library, but there's a haste creature right off the top. It's a Goblin Chieftain.
Yeah, and that's going to get Brad down to 2 here.
Right.
As she has 1 activation available. Brad does have access to the Castle Vantress, so he's going to be able to at least Wrath of God away this Goblin Chieftain and set up his next draw here.
Of course, this Goblins deck is not an aggro deck. It doesn't play like one, it doesn't curve out like one, and it doesn't have any type of burn spells to help go upstairs. You know, we call that reach, right, where they can kill you without actually attacking. Autumn is going to need to turn creature sideways to get Brad dead, and if he can stabilize against that, he could survive. He's down to just 2 life here, though.
Yeah, an Absorb would be fantastic. Teferi would be great. Now, Autumn does have an answer to the Teferi in the Shatterskull Smashing in hand. And that's an absorb.
Absorb. Does he want the baffling end? No.
I think he'd rather look for action spells, something like a Shark Typhoon or a Teferi.
Okay, so Wrath of God is a must here if you're going to keep Absorb. And there's a mountain off the top of the library. Nothing doing here for Burchette. Of course, the card we're really thinking about at this point, if you're sitting in Autumn Seed, is Muxus, but Absorb has that covered. The problem is Absorb has to counter everything. Like, is there a card you wouldn't count? Like, if they go Wily Goblin, aren't you just like, yeah, counter it?
Yeah, I mean, he does have a little more wiggle room. Like you said, there's not a whole lot of reach. Now he's got the Censor and the Castle Vantress, so he has the option to scry first before choosing to go with that Absorb. And no, this is bad. Autumn needed to string together any creature, even a 1/1, because with the 2 Castle Embereths, that's a lot of pressure. But now, I mean, Brad might be sitting at 2 life. He might be watching, oh, he's at 2, he's almost dead. He's ahead here.
He is. Brad is ahead. He gets to cycle here and then play Narset as well. And, you know, Autumn was running hot early, hitting a bunch of goblins off of the Snoops. Not running hot now. A few lands in a row is really not possible here for Autumn Burchette. As she views on, this one may be slipping away. There's still a window, but it is definitely closing as Absorb protects the next top deck, whatever it might be.
Oh, and that's a
Shark Typhoon.
Yeah, and Shark Typhoon also gives you some insurance about against haste creatures here at this point.
That's true. Yeah, this could actually be a worse off draw from for Autumn, given that she's just drawn the Goblin Chieftain. It could just run headlong right into a flying shark.
And I think
3/3 right now.
Right, and if you're Brad, you really want to save this Absorb for a potential Muxus off the top. So if Autumn chooses to play a Goblin Chieftain, Brad knows that there's nothing that Autumn can cast at instant speed to get the Shark Typhoon token off the battlefield. So we'll likely be cycling for 2 here to just trade with the Chieftain.
Get your card back. Don't be greedy about it, says Brad Barkley. Here comes Shatterskull Smashing to finish off Narset. And, you know, I wonder if Brad is even going to bother here. That's still a 2-for-1 in his direction.
Yeah, there's no way he's going to counter this. He's got an active Castle Vantress. He can cycle Irrigated Farmland. At this point, I mean, Castle Vantress is almost drawing him a card every turn with the mana that he has, as Scry 2 is very, very close to draw a card because he's just looking for action right now. He doesn't need lands.
And it looks like Autumn's going to try for a different line here to line up something more with Goblin Chieftain. But this is a situation where Autumn just doesn't have great options, because by doing this and not forcing Brad to react, he gets to use Castle Vantress and gets to just churn through his library, finding more answers. And that's all his deck's made of.
Yeah.
Looks like he's going to keep a Castle Ardenvale to give him something else to do with the mana. Brad really is a great blue-white mage here, isn't he?
Oh, yeah. Control mages have got to be appreciating this. He's got 3 Castle Ardenvales and 2 Castle Vantresses in his deck. A lot of times you would think maybe you'd be playing more Castle Vantresses to kind of manipulate your deck, but nope. More ways to create chump blockers in situations exactly like this, where you're really just trying to stabilize at a low life total.
I wonder if he's going to go for a big shark to try to close out the game quickly. Yes, that is the case. In fact, it's a 7/7, so a 3-turn clock once that shark starts slamming. And there's Teferi into another castle. Ooh, that Teferi is exactly what Brad wanted to see here. It's going to replace itself as a card and leave up a bunch of mana for various castle activations and such. But really, it's all about Absorb here.
Yeah, he's going to have the ability to absorb and also create a token off the Castle Ardenvale, I believe. No, he's going to be 1 short. He's going to be 1 short here. Oh, but
ooh, another shark.
But he found a Shark Typhoon here. So if you're in Autumn's position, you just kind of have to hope that Brad doesn't have a counterspell here.
Double Chieftain's kind of interesting, but Brad technically has enough to counter one and make a blocker for the other.
Right, because Autumn could go for a Shatterskull Smashing for 6. Mm-hmm. And if she did, she would kill... I believe she would be able to kill both the Teferi and the Shark. I suppose if you Shatterskull Smashing for 7, rather, to deal 4 damage to the Shark and 3 to the Teferi, as X is greater than 6, it would do double damage.
Right.
But all of that just kind of disappears, of course, because Brad has this absorb.
And that would be worth protecting, right? If
Absolutely.
trying to kill both of those key permanents, because we really have that absorb kind of locked in on Muxus or something that wins the game on the spot. But that's a huge swing, the Shatter Skull Smashing, if Autumn can pull that off.
Actually, the more I think about it, there is a chance Brad just might let that resolve, as awful as that feels, just because he's got Shark Typhoon as well, and Irrigated Farmland, and Castle Vantress. So he can still find cards that he needs. And again, the card that he's most scared of here is probably a Muxus off the top, which could allow Autumn to kind of steal a victory.
Well, here comes Goblin Chieftain on the battlefield. Now, technically, this is a lethal threat, and Brad has said, okay, you got it.
Just kind of hoping here, I suppose.
Autumn's going to go for the second Chieftain. Now, this one is likely to draw an absorb.
Now, this is a really tricky spot here if you're Brad, because you do not know what Autumn's last card is. If Autumn's last card is Muxus, and Brad goes ahead and absorbs this Goblin Chieftain, Autumn can sacrifice Goblin Chieftain to the Phyrexian Tower and cast Muxus. And that's definitely what he's thinking about right now. And so he's thinking, okay, can I afford to let this Chieftain resolve?
Right. And remember, he has the Castle Ardenvale as well. He's going to go for absorb, though, and that is definitely the play that he wants to make here.
And now, because he's at 5, he's not even in danger of dying to this Chieftain. And now Autumn is considering going after the Teferi here, which would then remove the potential. Actually, by attacking Teferi here, it would get Teferi down to 3, and then she could finish it off with the Shatter Skull Smashing. Of course, we know that Brad's got a Shark Typhoon here for 2 with Goblin Chieftain's name on it.
That's right.
We'll note that now that the absorb is gone, Autumn's back in this.
That's right. Muxus is now a live draw again. Now, it looks like it's going to be a turn, right? This shark can attack for 7.
And Brad's looking for that counter. He knows that Muxus is the card that he needs to dodge for a turn.
Let's see if Brad, and of course, if you're in Autumn seat, you're looking at that little chat box scene, top or bottom, 2 to the bottom.
Bottom.
That's what you wanted to see. There's Irrigated Farmland. What was the draw? It was the Censor. That's not good enough. Now, there's still a card coming from Teferi. Also, Cycle on the Censor, Cycle on the Farmland. So a lot of cards to see here for Brad, but he's going to need enough mana left over also to cast a counter. Absorb is what he wants to see. And it's another Censor.
And that's not going to get it done either, as double set. Even if Autumn draws a Goblin Matron off the top, that would be lethal. Not lethal, but that would allow her to play a Muxus and still pay for the Censors.
Okay, here's 7. 1 turn window here for Autumn Burchette. Can she find what she needs? There's a land hitting the battlefield. Brad's at 5 life. This is huge. Now, he still has cycles as well. It's not over either way. It's Herald's Horn. Can he Herald's Horn into Muxus? Or can she?
Right. But keep in mind, Autumn has access to Shatter Skull Smashing here for 8. Right?
Ooh.
So if Autumn goes Shatter Skull Smashing for 8, you can go 3 at Teferi and 5 at the Shark, or 4 at the Shark, rather. That's Shatter Skull Smashing for 7. And that would deal with both of these permanents while playing around the double Censor that Brad has in hand.
Autumn's so absurd. She plays around Censor so well, hyper aware of the card, even 2 copies of the dang thing. Here it is, Shatter Skull Smashing for 7. That double troubles as well. Not that it's needed.
But the only thing that this has allowed Autumn to do is basically give her that extra turn to try to draw this Muxus. Because with what Brad has in hand, I mean, Brad can still find a counterspell here to just counter the Shatter Skull smashing.
Cast out for Brad. Cast out could be useful as well.
Oh, and it looks like Brad just going for the win. If he finds an absorb, he can just counter it. There is a single Ether Gust, but I think he's already cast it. So this is going to resolve.
Okay, Autumn takes care of the two big problematic permanents on the other side of the battlefield, but she doesn't have enough mana for Herald's Horn. But boy, a pair of Teferis in hand here for Brad. He's got to find something.
Yeah, Brad just really, really wants that absorb.
Well, Narset's good at finding absorb.
Very, very good.
Autumn smiling. It's just like third game.
Muxus.
That's right.
Miss.
Just a whiff off of Narset? Wow.
Just a whiff. And now Brad has a little bit of safety here because he has cast out. Oh, was not what Autumn wanted.
Well, there's still Herald's Horn. Is that? No, it doesn't do anything.
You will see a trigger during the upkeep.
Oh.
That was the big turn. This was the best opportunity.
Right. The window was open for Autumn Burchette to find a Muxus. And so far, that has not happened. Here's Wily Goblin. Oh, so many misses for Autumn. She had multiple windows of opportunity, and it was land, and then a Wily Goblin. Okay, now Brad still has to find a way to finish this game off here, but you gotta figure with active Narset, active Teferi, he's gonna be able to find something. Also, that cast out could really be important. You know, sometimes they Muxus and hit one haste creature, and you can take care of that before damage.
Yeah, and this should probably do a really good job of just locking up this game at this point. This Disdainful Stroke means that Brad now has an answer to a Muxus. He's going to use this cast out on the Herald's Horn so that Autumn can't claw back in through the card advantage provided by that card. And at this point, Autumn is drawing one card a turn. Brad's drawing multiple cards a turn with multiple scries, making tokens if he wants, and has the answer to Muxus. Actually, multiple answers to Muxus with that absorb as well.
Interestingly, that was the best possible draw there for Autumn because it actually dodges Disdainful Stroke and can hit you more action, but that's going to draw absorb that Brad had found there. And this one is all but locked up for Brad. Barkley picking up game number one here after we go through the motions. Now, Brad does need to build out a board they can actually win, which will take a while unless we see
a Shark Typhoon.
Thank you. Shark Typhoon in a hurry, as that one will clean up this mess very quickly. Wow, what an incredibly close game there. Some really intense moments between these two. Brad desperately digging for counterspells while Autumn was desperately looking. That was like a 2 or 3 turn window to find a Muxus. She just couldn't quite do it.
Yeah, she was able to kind of put herself in a position to draw that Muxus right after that absorb was cast. I think she was thinking, okay, you know what? The coast is clear. I have 1 or 2 turns to try to find this, to try to come back and close out this game. But unfortunately, wasn't able to do so.
That's right. Another mountain off the top certainly is not going to help Autumn Burchette as these two face off.
Big shark.
4th time this tournament. There's a big flying shark, just big enough for lethal. And Autumn doesn't have any type of interaction here at this point in the game. And that's going to do it. Game number 1 goes to Brad Barkley, finishing things up in a real nail biter there. That was a super close one, Paul. And I think Brad's going to be happy to have escaped with the win.
Yeah, but I just, I want to talk about kind of Brad's play down the line, really just recognizing the different ways he could lose that game and then trying to the best of his ability to kind of play around that. And you can really, really tell he knows his way around playing a deck with islands. He really navigated that game beautifully, especially from the mid game towards the late game of that game.
Yeah, that's right. It just came together with all that extra card selection and cycling down the stretch, and Brad Barkley's going to pick up game number 1. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, though, we'll have more action from the Zendikar Rising Championship match. Don't go anywhere.
I'm Andrew Brown. I'm the technical lead of the play design team. I'm also the lead of the FFL team. If there's ever a disagreement on what a final number or effect on a card should be, I get to make the final decision. Leyline Tyrant actually is an interesting story. We put it into the file exactly as you see it right now. After a bunch of testing all of the new fangled stuff, we kind of just went back to the original version, which is actually really rare in our process because we kind of like tinker with everything. One of the most read things that we normally try to do is like kind of that fast mana ritual style thing. But Leyline Tyrant kind of flips that on its head where it doesn't make red temporary, it makes it more permanent. So this is one of the only red cards that kind of lets you stock up mana for later turns, which is pretty interesting. So one of the things we tried with Leyline Tyrant was we gave it when card name enters the battlefield or attacks, add R. So you got to like play it, you got mana immediately, you attacked, you got more mana to save up. While we thought that was cool, we didn't actually like it because we just thought it was too powerful in the end, so we did actually take that off. But I think in the end, one of the buffs that we did make to it was the death trigger. You could only hit creatures. So when we added any target versus only target creature, that was a kind of a trade we made by taking off the attack trigger. This is mostly a splashy one-off. Storing up mana is definitely way more green. So we want to try to keep it there, but it is in Red's color pie. So I'd say probably once every 3 or 4 sets, we'll try and do something like this.
And welcome back to coverage here of the Zendikar Rising Championship match. Marshall Sutcliffe with Paul Cheon. Players are consulting sideboards. Really, I'm looking down at Autumn Burchette's sideboard here. Does she have any big changes to make, Paul? I mean, how much can you really change about a combo deck like this?
Well, she's certainly going to be bringing in those permanents that allow her to kind of try outgrind whatever her controller mid-range opponents are trying to do. So those are namely the Herald's Horn and that 1 copy of Chandra Torch of Defiance and those 2 copies of Goblin Ringleader that she has in her sideboard. So all of those cards means that the strategy of 1-for-1ing your opponent is not really going to be that effective. And those permanents are also really difficult to deal with because of their card types. They're not creatures. And most of the times when you have control decks that look for answers against these creature-based strategies, a lot of the removal spells will be creature removal. So Wrath of God, not going to kill that Herald's Horn, not going to kill that Chandra. However, I do not think Autumn expected to be playing against blue-white control in the finals of this tournament. And Brad actually has a very clean answer to those cards in the 4 copies of Cast Out.
That's right. Really interesting to see blue-white control make it all the way to the end here. It's a deck that is not popular in Historic, traditionally speaking. Brad kind of putting it into the limelight here with his own build. And boy, he hasn't lost yet in the entire tournament in Historic. So I guess it's good.
Yeah, and I'd like to issue an apology on behalf of myself, and I'm going to say also the rest of the broadcast team, as coming into this event, we talked about the various Azorius control decks in the tournament, and we were all pretty much in agreement, and we all thought it was a bad deck. And well, Brad hasn't dropped a match. Maybe he's making us all look very, very dumb.
Yeah, it is incredible how well he's done in this tournament. I mean, if he can win the championship match here, he's just going to go undefeated with the deck against like some of the best players in the world. It's a really, truly a remarkable run here from Brad. By the way, a lot more on the line as we get into game number 2 here with the Goblin Chieftain on the battlefield now for Autumn once again playing around the sensor. We see Autumn has picked up 4 points for the season thanks to the top 8. Further solidifying her stance in the MPL. Nice job, Autumn. And then for Brad, perhaps even bigger deal here for Brad, because this locks Brad for the postseason Brad is going to be part of the Challenger Gauntlet, and depending on how well that goes for Brad, we could see Brad in one of the big leagues and for years to come, perhaps. I mean, this is a huge deal for Brad Barkley, and he's not even done yet today. Still has to try to get past Autumn Burchette to get a trophy and the money and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. And for Autumn, I mean, this is just more opportunities to continue to prove that she is, without a doubt, one of the best current players out there right now, right? I mean, just the level of dominance that she's had over the past 2 years has just been incredible. And if she wins this, she will be a 2-time champion of these really, really high-level events that we've held.
Yeah, I don't think you could make an argument at this point that she's not one of the best in the world. I know when somebody wins a tournament kind of out of nowhere, like Autumn did when she won the championship one, kind of burst onto the professional level scene. You can go, well, what's going on there? But those arguments are all gone now.
Right. But even in that event, I mean, she was beating she defeated Reed Duke in the mirror in that event, right? In the top 8. And along with Yoshihiko Ikawa in the finals, who's no slouch himself. So, I mean, again, just constantly just crushing the field here. And, just really, really doing a wonderful job of just continuing to build on her resume.
See Conspicuous Snoop go on the stack here, but Ethergust is going to meet that. And it's going to go right back on top of the library for Autumn. A little awkward. Finally, some mild punishment here for the Phyrexian Tower might mean that the Shatterskull smashing needs to come down if Warchief wants to hit the battlefield as well. I'm sure Autumn's thinking, what about Wrath of God now?
Yeah, and also Shatterskull smashing is like an okay way to...
It's a real card.
Okay way to put some pressure on a Teferi, right? So
you saw that, yeah. Okay, here's the turn that all blue-white mages hope for. Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, play it, untap, and have kind of a counter up. It's only a censor, but at least be able to use up that mana cycling or do something. And of course,
if Autumn can find a Muxus here, has the mana to pay for the one censor.
Well, there's a Conspicuous Snoop on top.
Oh, right.
Kind of brutal. So here comes Snoop.
Ooh, that is nice. Oh, I mean, well, this sequencing is just great for Autumn, right? I mean, you get to play Goblin Warchief. Censor doesn't do anything. This is a dead Teferi, and Brad's just going to have nothing. I mean, he's going to cycle these 2 censors, but as is, Brad's going to need to draw a sweeper to get rid of the threats on the battlefield, and Autumn will have a really clean follow-up here with a Herald's Horn off the top.
Jeez, this was beautiful here for Autumn Burchette. And Brad's going to have to hope that he finds some serious action with those censors. I'm thinking Wrath of God to get things going, but that horn is going to get out of hand as well. Okay, here comes Censor.
Wrath plus cast out. That's what we're thinking about.
There you go.
Thinking about right now.
Stroke. Okay, a little insurance policy here for Barkley, but not going to help right now. And there's a land. Draw step. Another land.
Cycle.
Going.
Wrath. Remember, he has a Shatter the Sky as well.
Okay, well, more insurance policies here. Grafdigger's Cage and Disdainful Stroke are fine cards in the matchup in general. But Brad is just facing down a board state here. I mean, there's another Warchief on top, too.
Warchief off the top. And Brad, interesting, chose to play an untapped land here instead of running out the Hallowed Fountain to perhaps bluff and absorb.
Oh, interesting. So Cage sitting on the battlefield is going to slow down the proceedings here somewhat on Autumn's side of the board. But still, Autumn has a decent board state going as it sits, especially with Herald's Horn hitting as well.
Yeah, and right now, Brad doesn't have an answer to the Herald's Horn and also just needs to find a way to deal with 5 damage incoming every single turn.
That's right. And he's only going to get a couple more turns to do so. Let's see if there's a Wrath of God on top of the library. No. Okay. Could be worse. If you're going to draw a land there, I suppose that's the one you want. You know, one of your castles is kind of where you want to be. Here's Herald's Horn revealing that Warchief. And is that's Crater Maker, so that could unlock. And there's a Muxus on top.
There's a Muxus on top. So now we can go Crater Maker, kill Grafdigger's Cage, and potentially go for the Muxus here. And as the Muxus would cost 4 mana here, right? with the Herald's Horn and Goblin Warchief in play.
Right. Mm-hmm. Woof. That's some heat on top of the library there for Autumn Burchette. So here goes the Crater Maker, going to take the Grafdigger's Cage and break it in half, throw it in the graveyard.
And this Muxus will get Disdainful Stroked.
Right.
But I mean, look at how much damage this Herald's Horn and Conspicuous Snoop has done. It's just drawn Autumn multiple cards.
On top, Paul.
Oh my goodness.
It's
like so even a Wrath won't do it here at this point, right? Because you're gonna take 5, you're gonna cast a Wrath, and guess what? Autumn can just go Warchief into Muxus, kill you.
Right. Like literally just those 2 cards don't even need to hit anything.
Yeah.
Wow.
I suppose Brad can make a 1/1 here and kill off the Skirk Prospector, but even then, I mean, that's not doing a whole lot. Autumn has plenty of mana to work with here.
I think Autumn's also considering the possibility of a Shark Typhoon.
Yep, definitely.
But as it turns out, Brad is out of gas, just has Hollowed Fountain.
Needs a big draw.
Here? Cast Out. That's you need to be a very optimistic person to hope that that's going to get the job done here.
I hope Muxus misses, and like we need just a clean whiff, but we need like a lot of whiffs because we need nothing on top with the Snoop.
There's another.
Okay, that didn't work. Okay, oh, that's a ringleader too. Oh my goodness, this is just so much value.
Brad has seen enough. Unbelievable string of cards there for Autumn Burchette, like 5 goblins in a row. And game number 2 goes to Autumn. She picks up that critical game 2 victory here post board, as we see some of the sideboard cards there from Autumn. We saw the Horn, which is a main and sideboard card, but also we saw the Ringleader, which is another way to battle 1-for-1 style removal or to recover from a Wrath of God. I was going to say a Wrath Effect, but it's actually just Wrath of God here. So thanks, Brad. Make it easy on me. And forcing a game 3. This is our opening match here. And what that means is, remember, this is a Zendikar Rising Championship match. We play best 2 out of 3 matches. So it will not be over here, regardless of who wins game number 3. But there is a game number 3, and it is upon us. Perfect 1-drop here for Autumn Burchette, the Skirk Prospector.
In a nice follow-up here, turn 2 with the Mind Stone.
Mm-hmm.
Allowing Autumn to develop her mana and potentially even run out of turn 3 Krenko.
We see the turn 1 Grafdigger's, or excuse me, turn 2 Grafdigger's Cage. Brad. Wow, Herald's Horn and
never mind.
Mind Stone. Right now?
I think so. I mean, this is when the coast is clear. Brad has a ton of counterspells, and he's still 2 mana away from playing a cast out.
Yeah,
so this seems like a really good opportunity to just jam a Herald's Horn.
Yeah, I think this Prospector is going to throw itself under the bus here and get this Herald's Horn on the battlefield while the getting's good. I mean, it effectively replaces a Skirk Prospector sacrifice every turn now, or sometimes even multiple.
Yeah, giving you that discount on the casting of all these goblins. Mm-hmm. And I mean, take a look at Brad's hand. I mean, it's got some interaction, but if he's forced to counter a spell, then he might miss a land drop because he doesn't have any more lands to go. I wonder if Autumn's just going for double Horn here.
I'm curious too. It's not legendary. You can play more than one. No, it's going to be Krenko Mob Boss, which is almost certainly going to be met with some type of removal spell, whether it's the Absorb or the Stroke, perhaps.
I think Brad wants to go with the more mana efficient play. He wants to maybe be able to put himself in a situation where he can potentially go Baffling End plus Disdainful Stroke on a later turn. And most of the really big threats in this Goblin deck cost 4 more mana. The Ringleader that you talked about earlier, and also, of course, the Muxus.
Right. So, yep, Absorb is going to put Brad up to 22. He does find a land for the turn. Castle Ardenvale plays it, passes a turn back, and now decision time for Autumn Burchette once again.
Yeah, not a whole lot of fantastic options. I think Autumn is just deciding whether or not she wants to maybe go for the Herald's Horn. Also, one thing to consider is the existence of Censor. So
For sure.
So maybe Autumn would choose not to cast Mind Stone here and just play Herald's Horn to possibly play around Censor. Already one absorb used. Not a lot of other counter spells that Brad could have that would counter this Herald's Horn, right? You wouldn't really expect him to be bringing in Negate, for example. So yeah, choosing to play around Censor here.
Yeah, Autumn has consistently played around Censor. You know, it's funny. I want to see Autumn play like a Thoughtseize deck because she is really adept at playing around what the opponents have. She's playing Gruul and Goblin. She never gets to see what's going on over there. Imagine how much easier it would be if you're just like Thoughtseize you. I know everything.
That's her biggest strength, though. She doesn't. She probably just wouldn't even play Thoughtseize in a Sultai deck. She's like, I already know what you got. I'm playing around everything. I'll just put more action into my deck.
There you go. I like it. Here comes the Shark coming in for 2, but that is not going to be a good long-term game plan against double Herald's Horn. Of course, finding a mountain on top is a sigh of relief here for Brad Barkley as Autumn doesn't get to start going off right away.
Yeah, and keep in mind that Muxus is simply a 4-mana 4/4 with that Grafdigger's Cage in play. Playing out a War Chief, but I mean, with 4 mana up, you got to be really scared of another Shark Typhoon, so might not even attack here.
Can I interest you in a 3-mana 4/4?
3-mana 4/4 haste? Get in there.
And it has with the triggered ability too, right? The get bigger when it attacks thing, like it's a lot of damage.
Yeah, and if this gets censored, it's not a huge deal because you're not getting a ton of value out of the Muxus anyways with that Grafdigger's Cage in play. And now you can attack with the War Chief.
Yeah. Sure. All right. In Herald's Horn we trust, says Autumn Burchette as she passes the turn back over to Brad Barkley, who finds an absorb, but boy, I think
there's so much potential. There is so much potential.
I'm looking for a Teferi or some other way to try to keep up with the Herald's Horn, and he's going mountain. Okay,
it's that's one. Is that another prospector? No.
It's a Krenko.
It's a Krenko. So now the Herald's Horn have drawn Autumn 2 cards. Snoop is another source of card advantage. Also keep in mind with the Mind Stone specifically in play, you can kind of mess around with the reveals from the Herald's Horns, right? If you miss on the first one, you can choose to sack your Mind Stone to see if you hit off the second reveal.
Unbelievable. This Herald's Horn, I swear, if Autumn can take down this tournament, that to me is the card of the tournament. I mean, it's been unreal every time we've seen it at being able to transition into this game where you're not entirely dependent effectively on Muxus. Instead, you can play a totally different game, yet it still helps you with the Muxus plan of getting it down as soon as possible.
Yeah, I mean, really, really great innovation because Herald's Horn was just a card that was typically played on the sideboard for the grindy matchups. But guess what? If you're expecting most of the field to be grindy matchups, might as well just put it in the main deck. And it's been serving Autumn really, really well this tournament.
Yeah, Autumn's running 2 Herald's Horn in the main and 2 in the board.
And also now considering whether or not to run the Snoop or the Mind Stone. Again, like I mentioned, if you play the Mind Stone, you allow yourself to potentially draw an extra card off the Herald's Horn, off the reveals.
Like reveal 1.
Reveal 1, if it's a land, you draw the land. The next reveal might be a goblin, then you would draw that goblin.
I think Autumn's going to be convinced that Brad doesn't have Censor at this point. It probably would have seen it.
Right.
And Brad's just going to take an island off the top of the library here. Double Shark Typhoon. How good is that going to be at this point?
Is it time?
I mean, I'm thinking of it. Like, because there's something to be.
He's got 2 follow-ups, right?
Yes.
I mean, if he goes Typhoon make a 6/6, Baffling End make 2 2/2s, and just keep chaining them together. I mean, at the same time, though, if he just passes, it's really difficult for Autumn to attack, right?
Right.
And just into a 4/4 Shark. So that's probably the play.
Yeah, I think I'd rather have a card plus a 4/4 Shark rather than effectively do nothing this turn and have a 6/6 next turn, but again, no cards. it really does make sense just to wait. And that's what Brad's going to do. He's going to attack. And this is going to make life difficult for Autumn, who finds a chieftain.
Wow.
Okay, that's a good start here. And then there's finally a mountain. And there it is.
But again, even with the chieftain, since Brad can make a 4/4 shark, none of these goblins can really profitably attack here. And keep in mind, Autumn is down to 11. Brad can make a 4/4 shark here, and that's a 2-turn clock.
Yeah.
That's 6 and then 6. And Brad has a baffling end plus the ability to make another shark. So Autumn actually needs to find a way to close out this game, or Brad's going to just shark Autumn down.
Right. The Goblin Chieftain would normally be a good start to that process, given that it's really the best lord that they have available, but it doesn't get any of these goblins above shark range here, as the shark is perfectly sized at 4/4 to eat up either the Snoop or the War Chief if it were in the red zone. And it doesn't seem like an all-out attack here would give Autumn the ability to actually win the race at this point.
Yeah, and Autumn is probably thinking like, wow, if he has a shark, I don't want to attack. But if he has a shark, I'm also dead in 2 turns. This is a pretty tough situation to be in.
There is a Snoop on top of the library here with the other Snoop. I wonder if you just do that and just ship with everything.
Well, yeah, so you're going to draw the Snoop. You can't, of course, play it because of the Grafdigger's Cage.
Right.
But that means that you're at least going to draw that 1 Snoop. Then you have the Mind Stone. Maybe you can find enough pressure. But, I mean, this is still such a really tough spot to be in. I mean, you're going to lose your chieftain here.
Right, and that's what Autumn's looking at. You saw her shake her head there, and I think she's thinking, okay, I get Snoop from the horn, and then one of the next 2 needs to be another chieftain or something. And then maybe I could squeak out a win, because again, we just give credit to Autumn for knowing exactly what's in hand, because she plays exactly as if she knows what the opponent has at all times. And she's remarkably good at sorting these things out. That, as you mentioned, this chieftain likely to get gobbled up by the flying shark here. And it's a nice hit. That's 8 damage coming in, but Autumn's going to have to put together a heck of a lot of power on the next one to really get the job done. And it feels really difficult to do so.
Yeah, I'm just trying to piece together how Autumn could come back. I mean, maybe if you can find Snoop plus a Crater Maker to kill the cage, cast it, then Muxus off the top with the Snoop in play, and now Brad's found an Ether Gust.
Oh, that should lock it up then.
Yeah, because now, I mean, you can baffling end the Goblin War Chief. Making it so that Autumn needs an additional piece to even try to get an attack in for lethal here. Has the baffling end, can make a 1/1 even as a chumper, and Ether Gust, a potential Muxus after a Crater Maker.
Right.
Or so just Ether Gust a Crater Maker.
And look at Autumn Burchette. She's distraught because she knows that baffling end play realistically took out any chances. Both players know about the conspicuous Snoop on top of the library. It's stuck there, as Paul pointed out, because of Grafdigger's Cage. It will go into hand here from the horn, but it felt like Autumn needed to peel a couple of haste
That's a Crater Maker too. Wow.
Oh, boy. Don't tell me there's a chieftain under there. Okay, it was a prospector. No. And then another Snoop.
Drew 3 cards. I mean, step 1, right? Step 1 is just play the Crater Maker and kill the cage. Now, Brad can actually choose to Ether Gust a Crater Maker. However, Autumn can then draw a card off the Mind Stone and replay it. But kind of I don't know if Autumn will just have enough mana to potentially play a Muxus or anything that would allow her to come back and win here.
Certainly not through the Gust, right?
Right.
It's just Brad Barkley has just seemed to have closed this game out from too many different angles. And I mean, Autumn was already in a precarious situation there. She needed to hit some pretty specific stuff to get the job done. All right, there's a Snoop on top of the library there, Paul.
Now we're going to crack a Mind Stone, keep this going.
There is a Skirk Prospector, which always lets you make a bit more mana, but no, it's Castle Embereth on top. And that seems to have shut the door. You saw Brad Barkley kind of lean forward a little bit there. And that's going to be GG from Autumn Burchette. And Brad Barkley is going to pick up the first match here in the Zendikar Rising Championship match. Incredible stuff here from both of our players. It was interesting the whole way, and in fact, looked like Autumn may to win that one, and it just slipped away from Autumn Burchette, and that's Brad Barkley picking up match number 1, Paul. A huge step forward to becoming our champion today.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out how Brad was able to get Autumn so low, right? I believe one of the Shatter Skull smashings may have come into play untapped, but I mean, that whole time we were just so fixated on the Herald's Horns and just the raw card advantage that it was going to provide Autumn. But at the end of the day, a big shark was enough to keep Autumn's offenses at bay and allow Brad to actually turn that around to a victory. So yeah, really well done by Brad, but a lot more Magic to be played still.
That's right. That was the 12th match win by Brad Barkley in Historic, the 3rd time beating Autumn. He only needs to win one of the next 2 to become our champion. We'll be back with more right after this. And welcome back to coverage here of the ZNR Rising Championship match. Marshall Cycliffe with Paul Cheon. Thanks a lot for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us here on Top 8 Sunday. This is, of course, the best of the best here. We've got Autumn Burchette versus Brad Barkley. And yeah, they're playing for it all. Brad just took a major step towards locking up victory here in the championship match. He won the opening match, best 2 out of 3. This is going to be on the line now for Autumn Burchette. She has no more wiggle room. She's got to win both of the matches that we have left. Those are best 2 out of 3s. And if she can't, it'll be Brad Barkley from Scotland taking this thing down. But never count Autumn Burchette out. We have seen her make some miraculous comebacks over the course of the weekend. Let's see if she can do it again. This is match number 2 underway. And is that a mulligan to 6 there for Autumn? Looks so.
Yeah, and I mean, she has got a gigantic mountain to climb here. Not only is she down a match here in this matchup, but in their specific head-to-head, I believe Brad has now beaten Autumn 3 times with this in this specific matchup. So going to be really, really tough. I think just the cards just line up so well for Brad because you're playing a deck with a bunch of counter spells, which is extremely effective against what the Goblins deck is trying to do. Because oftentimes you can't win with these little goblins. And you saw it in that previous game. Brad just needs to play a 3/3 creature, and all of a sudden your creatures can't attack, and you're going to have to hope to win off of either Krenko and Muxus. And Brad just has plenty of ways to answer those.
Yeah, of all the decks in the field here in the top 8, there was a lot of Sultai and 4-color mid-range decks out there. Brad's really the one that has the most answers to what's going on here, especially off the back of the 4 copies of Wrath of God that he can lean on to kind of clean up any non-Muxus kills. And then he has the counter spells and clearly understands the matchup as well, that Muxus is really, especially in game 1, the focal point.
Yeah, and if you saw there, Brad just considering Ether Gusting the Goblin Matron just so that he can slam a Narset there and make sure that its life total would not be dealt with there, the loyalty rather. But I think he might just be more interested in cycling this cast out and just ensuring that he can continue hitting land drops.
A little bit of a curveball there from Autumn, who already has a copy of Muxus in hand. Went and got Goblin Chieftain. Normally you'll see those Goblin Matrons get another Muxus. Oh, yeah. There's a cage.
And there is one of the 2 main deck cages, and this is a great deck, great card for any deck that can afford it. And I believe the Azorius control deck is basically the best Grafdigger's Cage deck because there are no cards in the deck that care about the graveyard. Sometimes you even see decks like the Sultai mid-range decks play Grafdigger's Cage in the sideboard just because of how powerful some of the graveyard synergies and strategies are in the format. But for this deck specifically, there's just nothing. There is nothing in the deck that cares about the graveyard. So you are happy to play Cage, and it's good against Sacrifice. It's fine against Uro, and it's also good against this Goblins deck.
Yeah, really brutal here for Autumn. You see the Narset hit the battlefield and minus. It finds Wrath of God, and she goes, okay, that's fine. And then with the 1 mana left over, there's Grafdigger's Cage 2, which, that's kind of the 1-2 punch, right? That's the type of 2-card combo that can make it so that you can't win off of Muxus all by itself. And on top of it, you can't win by building out a board simply by curving. You're going to need to find your card advantage engines like the Horn or the Snoop to get you ahead. And we don't see any of those for Burchette here.
Yeah. And now Brad's had a pretty healthy 20 life. So, I don't think he needs to fire off this Wrath right away. At the same time, he wants to try to see if he can get a couple of activations off this Narset if possible. Okay.
Yeah, he's going to go for it right now. So there's Wrath of God to sweep the board, play a land, and he can just play from that comfortable position of not having any board state to deal with at the full 20.
And these are the instances where the Mind Stones are a little bit awkward. Don't really help you tap for red. Doesn't really put any pressure on the battlefield, right? Because it's a ramp. It's a mana rock, if you will. So Autumn can either choose to go ahead and just go double Mind Stone this turn to kind of set her up for future draws, or just kind of run out this Goblin Matron just to put something out there in case Brad does choose to go ahead and play something like a Teferi or a Narset next turn, and having creatures in play is very big.
Yeah, Brad definitely aware of using up his mana in an efficient manner at all times. We've seen that from him throughout the course of the tournament, and he's doing that here, no doubt about it. Now he can play Narset plus his choice of Baffling End or Ether Gust available.
Yeah, looking for a Teferi here, hopefully, for him. It's the card you might be thinking about. Absorb, of course. Any counter spells would be okay, too. But right now, Autumn is really choked on mana. So with Brad, with that Ether Gust in hand, if Autumn just runs out of the Goblin Chieftain, you have to imagine that Brad's probably going to go ahead and go with the Ether Gust on the Chieftain here. Simply because that would allow him to get an additional activation off that Narset that's in play, because Autumn can only get it down to 2 loyalty.
Yeah, particularly with the Disdainful Stroke as a backup plan now, firing off the Ether Gust is super tempting, and Brad's going to go for it here, and that's going to be the turn for Autumn Burchette. Just can't get anything going without the mana. And as you mentioned, while Mind Stone plays an important role in getting you to Muxus early, here it's been nothing but awkward.
Yeah, it's just been kind of rotting away in her hand, and yeah, she's just she hasn't been able to string together lands here because right now she's just playing one spell at a time, stuck on 3 lands. Meanwhile, Brad has a ton of mana available to him, and he's been able to play something and also interact with what you're trying to do. And it's not like Autumn has one of those decks where you can just kind of play 3 1-drops in one turn and try to be aggressive, right? It's the average casting cost of this deck is actually quite high. You have a ton of 3-drops, like the Matron, the Chieftain, the War Chiefs, and the Herald's Horns. And then you got a lot of expensive other cards in there as well, like the Muxes, the Muxuses, I'm just going to say that for now, and the various and the Krenkos as well.
Well, the only consolation prize here for Autumn,
man.
There's Teferi, Hero of Dominaria.
Yeah,
that is exactly what I wanted to see. And this one feels like it's just about in the books here, Paul. I don't really see how you can come back from this if you're Autumn.
Yeah, because Autumn can play out a Chieftain here, but that would only get Teferi down to 1, and that's huge, right? Because next turn, being able to have Teferi survive, it doesn't really matter what his loyalty is, but if you can survive and untap as a control player, you are firmly in the driver's seat. And this is going to be so big for Brad. He can play a sweeper, tick up Teferi, have 4 mana up, has the ability to censor, which should be really, really good given that Autumn's stuck on lands here. And unless Autumn can't even find a haste creature here because of the censor in Brad's hand.
That's right. Even with the land off the top of the library, which is what we finally see here for Autumn, it just feels too late at this point. Brad is going to be able to leverage those counter spells, particularly the censor looks good here. And it's going to be Mind Stone, and then I assume Mind Stone, although I guess we could see a Matron, although that'll probably get censored.
Yeah, it's so tempting. Not anytime you can censor something, especially with that Mind Stone plus land, you're going to go ahead and go for the censor. And this is one of those spots where Autumn can't afford to play around censor. She really needs to try to develop her board as much as possible. So even if Brad could have it there, Autumn had to just go ahead and just go for that Matron.
Brad's like, I'd like to hit an Absorb. Nope, he hit 2 this turn.
I mean, this is the control player's dream hand. I look at it. I got 3 counter spells and a Teferi. Good luck.
That's
right.
This is right where you want to be if you're Brad Barkley. This is why he built the deck. This is why he showed up for the tournament with blue-white control in Historic, plus Teferi, find and absorb, your move. And here we go. There's going to be a chain of very powerful goblins to go on the stack here. To be fair to Autumn, Muxus Goblin Grandee is going to get Disdainful Stroked, but there's another one plus Krenko, so really the most powerful options possible in hand for Autumn, but none of them are going to resolve.
Yeah, I mean, with those 2 absorbs, and even with the Muxus, I mean, the Muxus with the Grafdigger's Cage is simply just a 6 mana 4/4.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it gets bigger if you can turn it sideways.
Yeah, I mean, you follow that up with a Chieftain or something.
Yeah, this is just brutal.
Yeah.
And there's another land off the top. And now all of a sudden, that's not what Autumn wants to see anymore. And now she can do nothing but draw lands. Here's a second copy of Mind Stone hitting the battlefield. So there's at least something there. But it's going to be another Muxus. Brad's like, sure, I guess I'll throw a counter at it.
I just have too many counter spells. I'm just going to fire off another one. Let's go ahead and make a token here as well. Continue ticking up Teferi. I mean, there's just, and the thing with Autumn is, she just has to kind of keep playing and just hope that Brad just doesn't have counter spells, or if some of the cards line up poorly, right? I think her big hope was get the Muxus countered, resolve Krenko, and just really hope that just Brad has no way to deal with Krenko. Because an unchecked Krenko is dangerous, is scary.
It is. That to me, given the Grafdigger's Cage is the scariest threat left. For Autumn, I think Autumn agrees with that, which is why you saw the first 2 big threats go into the stack be Muxus, which is actually less of a threat than Krenko. But the hope, of course, okay, well, there's a Herald's Horn. And that is going to that's going to demand an answer here as well.
Yeah, but now on this following turn, you're going to see an old favorite standard interaction. We have a Surge for Azcanta on the battlefield. That is going to transform into Azcanta the Sunken Ruin. And that, in conjunction with Teferi, means all the cards.
God, I just picture all the control players around the world just snuggled up on the couch.
Oh, they are loving this.
They're just loving every second of this. Meanwhile, the red players of the world are like, this sucks. Let's just go to the next game.
Counter spells suck.
Yeah. Teferi, Cast Out, Wrath of God, Absorb. I mean,
this
come
is
on.
a classic blue-white control deck, right? It's got the counters, it's got the card draws, it's got the sweepers. This is the prototypical Azorius control deck that Brad has brought to this tournament and so far executed to perfection.
Actual perfection. He is yet to lose with this deck in his hands. He dropped a couple of matches in standard, but he has not lost with blue-white control in historic in this amazing run from Brad Barkley. Remember, Brad's up a match here as well in our championship match, and that means that Autumn could be seeing this really slip away. If you're down a game and down a match, that is the lowest you can go here in the championship match. I mean, in order to come back from that, I mean, it'd have to take something we've never seen before.
Yeah.
You know, that's your classic, bottom of the ninth or down 3-1, whatever you want to call it.
Win 2 games in a row in an unfavorable matchup, then win another match after that.
Right. Brad Barkley, pretty stoic, right? You can see him on camera. He doesn't change his demeanor much. He doesn't change his expression much. He's a very thoughtful, straightforward player, and I think we're not going to see much out of him, maybe until he finally gets that last match win, if that were to happen.
Yeah, I will say that is something that's been pretty impressive. He just looks he looks cool as a cucumber right now.
Really
I mean, look at him. He just like, yep, I've played this deck a million times. I put in my bio that I love control decks. I can do this with my eyes closed. I've got a Teferi in play. How can I possibly lose?
Yeah, he is super chill. Of course, Autumn Burchette, on the other hand, tends to show her emotions on her sleeve. That's one of the many reasons that she has so many fans out there watching.
Yes.
It's because you can relate, right? Like you can say, that's how I would feel if I won something like this. I think everybody remembers when she won the first Mythic Championship there, and the intent after that.
Just a cheeky Castle Embereth activation.
A signal there.
Are we going to see
all chat about is a hard cast Shark Typhoon at this point?
I wanted to see a Teferi emblem, honestly.
Okay, sure. Well, you're going to have to settle for a game win there for Brad Barkley, because it's game number 1 going to Brad Barkley, and he is as close possibly get to becoming a champion here. A single game out of the next 2, failing that, a match win out of the next one, and Brad will be your champion. Autumn's going to need to take a very deep breath and try to prepare for what would be the most incredible comeback we've ever seen. We're going to be back with more right after this. Match coverage here of the Zendikar Rising Championship match. We have Brad Barkley and Autumn Burchette facing off against each other. Goblins versus Blue-White Control in Historic. And as we check in here, we are coming into game number 2 of the second match. As it stands, it's been all Brad Barkley. He won the first match and now is up a game in the second and is potentially teetering on the edge of a victory here, becoming your Zendikar Rising champion in the process.
One thing I want to talk about here, remember how in the previous matches where Autumn was just dominating all these Sultai decks, we were talking about how spot removal, not that effective against Goblins. Take a look at what's in Brad Barkley's sideboard. A Baffling End. That is not a card you typically would expect to stay in the sideboard against Goblins, right? And additionally, he's got Timely Reinforcements in the sideboard, which normally you would think, oh, against the red creature deck, I probably want to gain some life and make a bunch of 1/1s. Didn't bring that in either. So Brad, really recognizing what's important in this matchup and choosing not to actually bring in some of those removal spells that are traditionally good against decks that are trying to curve out with creatures.
All right, well, we're underway here. Autumn's going to be on the play, and well, a little slow of a start here. Just land, go. Back over to Brad. Now, what does Brad have going? Well, the first thing you see there is that sensor. But as we've noted, Autumn has been very reticent to run things into sensor. Now, there's a big stop point here, though, Paul. Either play something or play nothing is the question. It's not like Autumn can go for a 2-drop here.
Yeah, I mean, Autumn could, I guess, try to be really patient and just wait until next turn to play something. But I don't know. I mean, it seems like the longer you kind of play this waiting game, you're kind of more playing into Brad's primary strategy. So I think playing a card that you're okay with getting censored and then following that up with some more pressure is kind of the way that you want to go.
Autumn knew exactly what was going to happen there, but it does give us a hint as to how Autumn's approaching this matchup, doesn't it, Paul? Because she decided to throw Goblin Chieftain, one of her best goblins, at it, thinking, I'm more interested in these Herald's Horns to get me through the mid to late game.
Yeah, and that absorb off the top was so big for Brad. He didn't have anything else.
No.
He just had the Censor and a Teferi and a bunch of lands. So that absorb to counter the Herald's Horn was huge. Now, however, there's a second Herald's Horn, and Brad can cycle this irrigated farmland, but I don't think he has a way to counter this Herald's Horn.
No, I don't think so either.
Unless he has a veto, which I highly doubt.
Yeah, he does play 3 of those in the board, but yeah, I don't think he's bringing those in. So there's Herald's Horn. Now that could be a window here for Autumn Burchette to get right back in this thing. We've seen a couple of strings of goblins come off the top of the library with the Herald's Horns over the course of a couple turns and really put Autumn right back into this.
I'm really curious what Autumn chooses to get with this, because normally you would think Muxus, but we're playing against a deck with a bunch of counter spells, planeswalkers. Perhaps Autumn would consider getting a haste creature here instead. We've seen her do that in the past. If she gets a Goblin War Chief, you can go War Chief into Krenko, into a bunch of tokens. But you also have to be mindful of the fact that Brad has potentially up to 5 sweepers after sideboard, with that Shatter the Sky acting as the 5th sweeper out of his board.
Take a look at Brad's hand here, Paul. It's just Teferi or bust, a bunch of lands. In fact, 3 Castle Ardenvales and a fortress.
Right, and which is why it might be even more important for Autumn to look for a haste creature here in case next turn Brad just slams a Teferi. If you get something like a Chieftain, you can actually just get the Teferi off the battlefield, and it puts a lot of pressure on Brad to find a 2-mana instant speed interactive spell to stop that from happening.
Hey, there you go. Goblin Chieftain in hand now for Autumn Burchette. And Brad says, well, here we go. I'm going to play out my Teferi.
It's got 4 lands in hand here.
It's a Plains Arden and another Teferi.
Oh.
This is not a good draw for Brad Barkley. Herald's Horn hits Conspicuous Snoop. And there's a Muxer.
Wow.
Let's just do that.
Yeah, but Muxus gets censored. I do not believe Autumn is going to run into censor here. I think just running out the chieftain into another goblin is just the far safer play and far less punishing here.
So is it going to be a prospector, a snoop, or a Krenko? If you want to play around sensor, you can go for the snoop.
Prospector first. So you can pay for a sensor.
Lovely.
Then probably a snoop to maybe play around Ether Gust. Although if there's an Ether Gust in Brad's hand, he would Ether Gust the chieftain to prevent the goblins from attacking with haste.
Right. And these are the things, of course, that are going through Autumn Burchette's head right now as she sorts out, first and foremost, how to get Teferi off the battlefield. Yeah, these are tough situations and a good moment here for Autumn to take a seat back and really think this through. Remember, this has been a 3-day tournament for our players here. They're playing in Europe on European time. It is late.
Do note that Brad only plays 1 Ether Gust in his 75.
Is that right?
The reason I know this is I built and have been playing his deck off rounds here, and I put it together, and I was surprised that he only has 1 Ether Gust. So it's a little bit, you don't have to worry about that card as much as you would when you play against a Sultai deck that has 3 to 4 copies of that card.
So I don't know if you caught that, Paul, but all 3 creatures attack Teferi, get it dead, and Autumn Burchette, huge sigh of relief there. And there's another hit off the Herald's Horn. This time it's Goblin War Chief into Prospector.
I think it might be Mux's time here now. No?
Hey, this isn't too bad either. Krenko with the Chief out puts a huge amount of power out. Another 8 that can attack like now.
Yeah, 14. By playing the Krenko, even if Brad has a counter, you can still have more follow-up plays.
Now, Brad has Shark Typhoon. He can make a 4/4 Shark.
Yeah, and Autumn is certainly going to be on top all over that. She will definitely know that that is a possibility. And the fact that this Krenko resolved, by the way, is a really big telltale sign here that it is extremely unlikely for Brad to have a counterspell here, right? Because it's a really tough sell for you to expect the Azorius control deck to let Krenko resolve, given what's in play right now with that Goblin Chieftain and that Skirk Prospector. Because if you let that Krenko resolve, all of a sudden you can make 4 tokens, and then now you have a ton of mana to play even more spells out of your hand for a potentially lethal attack. So if you're Autumn, I mean, maybe she can figure this out, but you have to think that there's a really high chance that Brad probably doesn't have a counter here for Muxus.
Okay, well, first things first. Just casually make 8 power of haste creatures. And yeah, it looks like that's going to be the game plan here for Autumn. This is going to set up a potential, probably a 2-turn clock, especially if the board stays the way it is.
And if you're Brad, Wrath of God. Let's find that Wrath of God. He is going to be cycling the Shark Typhoon here for 4. Going to be eating up that Skirk Prospector, and is really, really going to be hoping for a sweeper to deal with what's in play.
Okay, so big attacks here. Autumn says, okay, I've got you down to 13. There's a shark on the battlefield. It eats up the Prospector. Is there a Wrath of God? There is, right off the top of the library here for Bradley. Now, I'm looking at that Muxus here, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's going to be enough, but then the question is, will Autumn play around a sweeper? Not a sweeper, but a counterspell, right?
Right.
We know as the viewer that the coast is clear for this Muxus. However, we've already seen Autumn choose to play around a wide variety of counterspells that Brad could have. So it wouldn't surprise me if Autumn tried to play it a little more conservatively, but we'll see what she does here. Very curious.
Horn finally missed. It was Castle Ambreth on top. Big moments here for Autumn Burchette. Do you go for the Muxus or do you play out the other cards? I mean, she has a perfectly reasonable backup plan here with Snoop to maybe see if She can find some stuff. The Prospector, the War Chief.
Just the problem is it doesn't put a lot of pressure on the battlefield because, I mean, well, I guess it does, right? You can, if you go War Chief Snoop, nope, she's going for it.
You may go for it here.
Time?
Brad has no answer for
Brace
this.
yourself, Brad. Brace yourself.
This could be the win right here in game number 2. And
there it is.
Yes, there is.
That's got to do it.
That's plenty enough to get the job done. Cranko Mob Boss can get turned sideways first. And then Muxus is going to attack for infinite here. Incredible hit there for Autumn. Burchette knows exactly when she needs to go for it. Did just that. And that's going to be the scoop. Game number 2.
Staying alive.
Wow. Incredible. One step to the good there for Autumn Burchette. Okay. Now, another sideboarded game against blue-white control is all that stands between Autumn and a third and deciding match here in our Zendikar Rising Championship.
Yeah.
Woo!
Does not have a loss to give for this match. Needs to win this, then needs to win 2 more on the draw. Now, all of a sudden, those sensors that Brad's playing become so much better when you're on the play. It becomes so much more difficult to play against when you're on the draw.
Right. Whew. Deep breath, everybody. Let's go to game number 3. Autumn's going to kick things off with Tapland Go, so nothing doing here. And is there a sensor in hand here for Brad?
No sensor in hand. No cheap interaction at all. Not representing the sensor either. So this does give Autumn the opportunity to develop her mana here with this turn 2 Mind Stone. And that's big because that now allows her to comfortably play around sensor next turn.
Things have gone well for Autumn here. You know, normally you feel like you're under that pressure right away of Brad holding up the 2 lands and you having to sort out what you want to do. Herald's Horn, if it were to hit the battlefield, and now, of course, there's a sensor.
And he drew the sensor this turn.
Yeah, of course. But Herald's Horn, a big step forward once again for Burchette because it gives her the ability to not only power out a quick Muxus, but also to have a completely different game plan that's based more on a kind of a mid-range card advantage engine.
Yeah, I imagine Brad's going to go ahead and censor. Oh, no, he's not. I guess he's got that Shatter the Sky and he really wants to hit land drops. I thought he was going to go for a sensor here potentially and then cycle a cast out.
He just wants to make a shark. Are we going to see cast out take out the horn right now?
That's what it looks like here. Okay. That's the card that he's most concerned about because it is a continuous source of card advantage for Autumn. Wants to shut that down because if Autumn can't really punish Brad on this following turn because Autumn is 1 land away from Muxus, especially if you get that Herald's Horde off the battlefield, Autumn will simply just have 5 mana. So Muxus is not a problem. Anything else that Autumn casts is not that big of a deal, given Brad's life total and the fact that he's got Shatter the Sky in his hand.
That's right. Yeah, this is a big deal. This cast out hitting this horn takes away a lot of its utility. Basically, Autumn got 1 mana out of it rather than potentially a card in hand and then, you know, another mana out of it. And Brad is going to be happy to have the answer at hand for it. Now here's Conspicuous Snoop hitting the battlefield and there's a Cranko. But again, with no horn, Cranko's going to be stuck. No haste creature currently, so the Snoop can't get activated.
Yeah. Autumn does have the ability to activate the Snoop on upkeep with that Cranko being on top to make a couple of tokens.
Okay, and we could see Prospector or Matron here.
Right, but assuming Brad lets that happen, as Brad does have a Shatter the Sky in hand. But he's got to be really careful about the Shatter the Sky because if he fires off the Shatter Sky, that leaves the window open for Autumn to just slam a Muxus for potentially lethal. She doesn't have one, but that is the potential here. So maybe Autumn needs to play out this Goblin Matron, go get Muxus, and put Brad in a really uncomfortable situation where, sure, if you want to play the sweeper, you might die to Muxus.
Okay, well, that's not what happened. In the end, Autumn decided to just say go. and pass the turn back over to Brad Barkley. Brad, on the precipice of a victory here. Remember, Brad just needs to win this game. That's it. Zendikar Rising Champion, lock it up if Brad can win this game. And we've got a real game here between these two. This has been a very close one. Brad, of course, is going to be tempted to use Shatter the Sky here to get that Snoop off the battlefield. Even the Crater Maker before it gets anything good. But boy, that's got to be scary if you're Barkley, when you could just see the game completely fall apart to a Muxus and you have no idea what's going on in hand.
And I think he's going to, for the time being, it seems to me like he's going to try to play around it here. But at the same time, I mean, he's going to have to Shatter the Sky anyways. Autumn doesn't have to put too much more on the battlefield here. If you're going to get that activation off the Conspicuous Scoop on upkeep, copying Krenko's ability, all of a sudden you're going to have 6 power on the battlefield.
Brad basically has to line up Shatter the Sky for this turn or next. And he's decided, I can wait, and I'm going to. So there's the activation on
man.
Krenko. And then what's on top of the library? A Chieftain? Boy, that cast out may need to come down this turn. Brad does have a lot of life total to play with at 16. And this is the more fair side of things from the Goblin player, you know, from Autumn. It's not lethal. But boy, that is a scary board if there ever was one.
Yeah, I mean, this is a lot of damage. And
is there any way that Krenko can get in the mix here with the Prospector?
Yeah, but you're just giving up so much, right? Because you have to play Prospector, sacrifice 2 Goblins into the Krenko, and then your opponent could just have a Disdainful Stroke.
Oh, God, right.
Yeah, or an Absorb, and that would just be losing a little too much here, I think. I think you could make a case for running out Goblin Matron to fetch Muxus, right? And this would basically force Brad to sweep, and then Autumn could follow that up. But this Censor should stop this Matron.
That's right. There is no Skirk Prospector on the battlefield right now, and this completely taps out Autumn Burchette. Boy, this Censor could be massive for Brad Barkley.
So Brad has a lot of information here, right? If you censor the Goblin Matron, you know there's a Mind Stone on top, and you know there's a Krenko in Autumn's hand. You just basically have to hope that that very last card in Autumn's hand is not Muxus. And if it isn't, you're not in a horrible shape here. You can cycle some cards, try to draw some lands. You're going to have to cast Shadow the Sky next turn and just kind of hope that it's not a Muxus. Because if Autumn just slams Krenko, Brad does have the answer in that with the cast outs that he has in hand.
That's right. Boy, this is super, super close. We're going to see one of the cast outs get cycled. Remember, Brad's still trying to hit land drops here. Same thing with the Censor that he drew there. Let's see if he can find some mana. No, it's a Shark Typhoon into a Baffle. Wow, he doesn't hit his land drop. Sky is the deal, and he's going to be holding his breath here, hoping that last card, that last unknown card, isn't Muxus, but it's not.
Right, and now Autumn's plays just play everything in your hand, right? Play your Prospector, play your Krenko, play, and I suppose you don't have to play your Prospector this turn.
This is incredible. This is going to come down to top deck city here from Autumn Burchette, because Brad's going to be forced to use either all or the majority of his mana to take care of Krenko, and Autumn's going to be down to Skirk Prospector.
Actually, I think playing Skirk Prospector might be good here, because if Brad doesn't have a Wrath specifically and has a cast out, right? Then the cast out takes the Krenko, and if you miss on a Muxus, you can still crack a Mind Stone and find a Muxus, and with Prospector in play, have just enough mana to cast a Muxus if you draw it.
Oh, interesting. Right.
So it's close because you've seen one cast out and you've seen a sweeper, right? So you could go either way there.
Okay, Prospector is going to be on the battlefield. Autumn Burchette's all in. Nothing left in hand. Passes the turn back. Finally, a land drop here for Barkley. But his job is simple. He needs to take care of Krenko Mob Boss before it gets out of hand.
Yeah, you cannot
beat you on its own.
Yeah, you cannot let Krenko get an activation. I mean, I know you want to play around Muxus, but I mean, Autumn just doesn't have to do anything here. Autumn can just go make a bunch of tokens. I suppose Brad can cast Baffling End on Skirk Prospector, and if if Brad does choose to do that, that does slow down the goblin creation from Krenko.
It does, and it would let you leave up Disdainful Stroke, where if you're treating a top deck Muxus as a loss, you may decide to go down that route, but you will have to deal with Krenko. Yes, it slows it down, and Brad's going to take his medicine and fire off Cast Out, and this is a big top deck situation here for Autumn Burchette.
This is the window.
She may be able to do this one, and it's a mountain off. Still one more spin at it, though. Here's the Moonstone. Is there a Muxus? No. Tower.
All right, got a sack again. Goblin ringleader.
It's a chieftain.
Yep.
It's a chieftain. Okay. It could be worse than that. This does allow a reasonable attack for 4 to at least put some pressure up, but Brad can breathe a sigh of relief. He is still alive, has the baffling end. Oh, and there's the Fury.
Yeah, but I'm not sure you run it out here.
I wonder if you just don't do anything. He's got
because if you run out to Fairy, if Autumn just plays a Castle Embereth, you're dead.
Oh, right.
So I think the correct play is probably just go Baffling End on the Chieftain, keep up Stroke for Muxus, and also have the ability to cycle Shark Typhoon for 1 end of turn to be able to have a creature that trades with the Skirk Prospector later. I think that's the better line. So really good read here on Brad. Still trying to play around the Muxus because now he can afford to, and it pays off.
Oh, the Muxus. Just a turn late for Autumn Burchette. What heartbreak. And even you can tell.
Just go for it? Are you just...
He knows that this is just not going to happen like this. She's going to throw Muxus on the stack, but you can tell by her demeanor
this is not resolving.
So unlikely to resolve. The window is there, and it was one turn too late, and the disappointment on Autumn Burchette's face is palpable as Brad had the answer in the form of Disdainful Stroke. Now, Brad is down to 5, but there's a Castle Ardenvale, and this one is well and truly slipping away here. Now, Brad doesn't have any more answers for a Muxus here, right, Paul?
Right, so Muxus or even Matron for Muxus would get it done here, as there's a Phyrexian Tower in play, and I believe Autumn should have enough mana here to cast Muxus. Well, if it's a Matron, maybe.
It was another mountain. Boy, the door was open there for Autumn Burchette here in this deciding our second match, and she just could not quite find it. Now she's going to keep getting in with this Prospector. Are we going to see it get eaten up by a shark here? Probably so, right?
Yeah, the thing is, now he can fairly freely tap out here just because he is not looking at lethal damage here.
Right.
So
now it's who can, if Brad can find an Absorb, right, he'll all but lock this thing up.
Definitely.
There's a land. We get it to Fairy activation. Does this have a hard counter? No, nope. It doesn't, but it is another shot at one.
So now you can cycle.
Cycled. And it's another land. Another Muxus here?
Could. I mean, he does. Brad, keep in mind, Brad does have a couple of extra. Oh,
goodness sakes. Heartbreak here for Autumn Burchette as Brad Barkley fades another top deck here. The most you'll get out of Brad is some blinking. He's like, okay, I'm still alive. But every turn that goes by, it gets harder and harder and harder here for Autumn Burchette to get back into this thing. Although Brad is finding a heck of a lot of...
I think you're going to see a main phase Castle Vantress activation here before the Teferi to ensure that he finds that hard counter. Because if he does, it's game over.
Right. He just locks it up effectively.
Bottom.
Find something with Teferi. It's another Shark Typhoon. The door is still technically open here for Autumn Burchette, who's had multiple rips.
Okay.
We find a Muxus and try to steal this game.
Yeah, Matron would do it. Nope.
Mountain. Oh.
So many chances. And that's what makes this deck so exciting to watch, because you never know. Autumn is so extremely behind right now. But with the top deck of one card, she could still potentially get back into this.
And
but this locks it up.
That is an absorb for Brad Barkley from Scotland, and that should be the absorb that wins him the tournament. An incredible run for him. He has not lost in historic, and he is poised for victory here in the last championship match that we've got here. Autumn Burchette, unbelievable run to get here. There's a Shatter Skull smashing, but again, it just looks like there's too much on the other side here from Barkley.
Yeah, everybody should start getting ready to pack some mystical disputes in their sideboard. You're going to be seeing a lot more of this blue-white control deck on the ladder. I'll tell you that much.
That is correct. You know, all of the blue-white mages were just hoping for something like this to happen. Hey, it's my time to shine. We're back.
It's been a while. It's been a while since a good control deck has been considered a top-tier deck, really. Especially in historic with so many cheap, efficient threats. A lot of people thought that Teferi might just be a little too expensive. Maybe doesn't have a home necessarily. And Brad is proving all those people wrong here, as he is going to be
He's got the victory.
The champion.
All he do is cycle the Shark Typhoon, and that will give him lethal in the air. Brad Barkley is your Zendikar Rising champion. An unbelievable run for Brad, as he never lost in historic a single time. He knocks off one of the best players in the world.
Give us something, Brad.
And it looks like he just won some snacks. What
He
is
just
going
had a
on?
peanut. He just won the Zendikar Rising Championship. Wow.
Unbelievable. Another fantastic run for Autumn. We're getting used to it at this point, seeing Autumn in these positions, but little sip of a beverage here for Brad to celebrate. Congratulations, Brad Barkley. You're the Zendikar Rising champion.
Incredible. I mean, what a run. And talk about just being the historic master, right?